should be helping to shape the male child's identity is absent, who is going to shape the male child's identity? Who will shape it? Huh? The mother. So what's happening is that a lot of women are the ones who are shaping the identity of the male child. Now that's a problem. Okay? Number one, that's not God's design. All right, so they're messing with God's design. So the global issue, the regional issue, the Caribbean is a big issue, and now local Trinidadian. So my research centered in Trinidad, but I had articles from across the world and around the world. So what's happening is that the male identity, the identity is primarily framed in the family of origin, which is the home in which the child is raised through the modeling of what we call attachment relationships. So I know we don't have a lot of time tonight, but attachment relationship, we're going to come a little later. We're going to talk about that. The quality of relationship that, and we're going to talk about the male child tonight, right? Because we talk about men. The quality of relationship that the male child has with the key attachment or significant people in his life creates either a secure bonding, a healthy relationship, or an unhealthy relationship. So if the male child, remember the infant is powerless, vulnerable, all right? If the male child is forced to be around the mother in those critical times of their development, guess who the male child is going to bond with? The mother, because the father is absent. Okay? So the male child's identity is being shaped by a female. So the framing is to be done with men who should be doing this work, but the man is absent, so the woman is doing the work. So the research into the experiences of the men raised without fathers or father figures highlighted two findings. Identity modeling. The absence of the father meant these boys learned their identity from their mothers, who were often strong figures. So of course, if the father is absent, the mother has to take up the slack, as we say, right? Carry the load. But a lot of women like to say, well, I'm the man and the woman. And I say, hold up. You can only be the mother. You cannot be the father. So guess what? That role will be left undone because the mother cannot substitute for the father. And she's only going to tell her male child how she thinks as a mother, what the identity should be like. All right, so the mother is the ones that are shaping these boys. I was telling you earlier about attachment. And I want you to keep this in your mind, right? Attachment is, by definition, is a deep and enduring emotional bond that connects one person to another person across time and space. All right? Now, this is a regional issue. The research shows that a lot of men are physically present in their households, but emotionally distant from their children. And we're talking about a male child. So the man is, many of the men are not in the household, and many of the men are delinquent, but many of them are in the household, but they're not playing that significant role of helping the child see who he should become as a man in the future. So according to the research, 9 men, because 9 men were part of my research, and I interviewed them, right? And these men provided knowledge about their childhood experiences without a father and a father figure. And they shared what shaped their self-understanding, their identity, and their social roles. So my research showed masculinity normalized as firm and aggressive and tough. Even when men are hurting, they are told, be tough, suck it up. All right? So a lot of our men in my research told me, Miss Harper, they told us our emotions were not important. Well, that helped to shape your identity because God gave you emotions. but they stifled the emotions because, of course, the father was not there to model it, and the mother said, we can't afford to have you sniffling and crying around. You got to tough it up, okay? Vulnerability was not acceptable male behavior. Male could not afford to be vulnerable. You just have to be strong. But guess what? When they're hurting and they're not allowed to process their emotions, they stifle it. And guess what? At some particular time, it's going to come out because God gave you that emotion. All right? So what we find in the future, and I'm kind of jumping and coming back, is that sometimes domestic violence might be an indicator of men who do not know how to manage their emotions, and when they're triggered, the only thing they can think of is to beat the woman, or to hit her, or to drink something, or to go by the bar, not knowing what to do with their emotions. Okay? So guess what? One research participant shared this. A father, this is what one of the men said in my research, a father would toughen you up, pull you up, so you are not viewed as soft, whereas a mother might give you a break. Now, these are men speaking, right? These are not my words. Another man said, men are supposed to be tough and strong. And I don't think men will be honest with men because men are so tough. So what's happening? A lot of our men are not getting in touch with their emotions. They don't understand themselves, their own masculinity, their own identity, because society says you have to be tough, you have to be rugged, you have to be harsh. All right? So you're not getting in touch with that part of you that God gave. The second quick one before I finish this is the impact on self-worth. We're talking about self-identity. The absence of the father rather than the presence of the mother inflicted the most severe blow to the man's esteem, worth, and identity. It was not the presence of the mother. It was the absent father that inflicted the father wound. And so the male child grew up with a wound that nobody else could help him except God, because the mother cannot do that. So the study concluded that these men learn how to be men using maternal models, or models from a woman. All right? Let me just show you very quickly, because I have the actual words here. Okay, so one of the men said, a woman has natural instincts to protect, care, and love, but even with her best effort, she's ill-equipped to furnish a man with everything he would require to really be solid, stand, and absorb the real essences of being a man. All right? And the other fathers agreed that there is something that is going to lack stepping into the world, that he will be robbed of an environment where he's raised by a woman alone. Another man said, if my dad was around, I would have been mentally strong because the world is a hard place. A father has to show their children how to be strong, not to fight. Another one said, you had to man up with express emotion seen as soft. I'm just telling you what these actual words were saying. Another one said, feelings don't matter. That's when I was interviewing them, right? That's what they say. People might look and sugarcoat it, but I'd be frank with you. As a man, your feelings doesn't matter. As I'm speaking about your feelings about things that affect you, this would be seen, make you seem as soft. What am I saying? These are men. These are fathers who have sons. Because in order to qualify to be a part of my research, you had to be a man who had a son at least 15 years and younger. All right? So these are men who were already parenting sons, and they were completely confused about who they are because the person who was supposed to show them who they are was not present. Can I say two more things? In my work with families, it's observed that men who lack insight into how these early factors like abandonment or rejection introduced by the father's absence or inconsistency, it impacted their childhood, often struggle with anxiety in their own fathering role. So what am I saying? In the early stages, these boys, abandonment issues and rejection issues were introduced into their development. Okay? And so from very early, they felt rejected. From very early, they felt abandoned because the father was not there. And what that did, that introduced a sense of anxiety. So as men, they struggle with anxiety because early in their lives, they felt that they were not important. They felt abandoned. I will just leave it there. You can go to the next question. If you have any questions out of that question.
Yeah. As you was saying that day, I was looking back to as how I was brought up. Now, I too, I didn't grow up with my dad, and it was basically my mom. So I would have patterned things from her,
Yeah.
in terms of how we do things and stuff like that. I too, and I didn't, growing up, I used to say, I mustn't cry, but I used to cry, but I wouldn't cry in front of anybody else. I would take a corner, I would hide, and if I had to cry, I would cry. Right?
And who
But
told you that was okay to hide and cry?
basically, I don't know. It wasn't like anybody telling me it was okay. I just had that. Because to me, if I was crying in front of people, I would have felt like, you're a boy. What are you crying for? It's supposed to be tough, right? And in crying, it makes you appear weak in front of your peer or in front of people as a boy child. But I used to cry. I go in a corner and I cry.
So you cry, you show your emotions privately.
Private. I didn't need to let anybody see. I crying at all. So it kind of resonates with me when you're speaking about the absence of fathers, right?
Can I say one thing on that? One of the men in this study said, "Oh my Lord, that is why I like curtains so. That's why I like that's why I like curtains. I like putting up curtains and I like fixing the house and decor and everything." He said he never knew in all of his life why he liked curtains. That's because his mother liked curtains and the father was not there. You all understand what I'm saying? Who is the most available is the one the child is going to pattern their life after, but they once said that as well.
All right. In what ways do fatherless fathers perpetuate cycles of brokenness in families and communities based on the presented data? Oh. In what ways do fatherless fathers perpetuate cycles of brokenness in families and communities based on the presented data?
All right, so all the responses are going to be based on the research, right? So here what's happening. How do fatherless men who grew up without their fathers or grew up with inconsistent men in their lives, how do they perpetuate brokenness in families and communities? The assumption here is that they would have experienced some level of brokenness with their fathers being absent. So here what's happened. Whatever is modeled is going to be learned. Okay? Why is that happening? Because a child naturally imitates what they see and who is doing whatever. Because when you're an infant, you can't say, well, that's right and that's wrong. Anything you see, you assume that the people in your life are doing the right thing. And remember, the brain is growing fast. So the brain connections, the neural connections, they say in our brain, it's over 100 billion neurons. And these neurons are making connections every nanosecond. Everything you do, to lift my hand, a message was sent. To lower my hand, to blink my eye, messages sent every day from the brain. So when I say parents, you think you're raising a child, but you are shaping a brain. And wherever the brain goes, the behavior goes. All right? So if the father is absent, whatever behavior the mother has, whatever language the mother has, that's what a male child is going to pick up. That's what a male child is going to imitate. Okay? Because it's been modeled by the mother. And if the mother, like some men said, they learn how some very, very negative things about their father from their mother. Or he's the worst man, he's a worthless man, he's a this man, whatever. So they grew up not having a positive view of their father. Okay? Whatever is modeled is learned and perpetuated. If brokenness is introduced in the child's life, the child becomes a broken child. And a broken child becomes a broken man. A hurting child becomes a hurting man. Because it's going to stay with you over and over and over. You're seeing this. And the attachment theory I talked about earlier, here's what the definition is. This is the study of how relationships with your parents as a child or primary caregiver starting in infancy, all right, lay the foundation for your future relationships in adulthood. So your future relationship as an adult can be traced right back to your childhood relationship with whomever was present or absent in your household. Are you with me? A foundation is formed. You don't even know. We don't even know. A foundation is being shaped for us. It's as an adult you realize, hey, a script was written for me. A template was made for me. I didn't have anything to do with that. The parents, the people in my environment, they made those decisions. And it's only as adults people are able to say, well, oh my gosh, I have this behavior, this attitude, or whatever, this way of thinking. How did I come that way? That's because that was introduced and reinforced. When I was preparing for this, I listened. Many of you have heard about Derek Prince. He's a pastor. Derek Prince. And one of you, two of you have heard about Derek Prince. Well-known teacher of the word, and he operates in the gifts of healings and so on. And when I was doing the research, he was talking about the whole idea of rejection. And we don't understand how dangerous that is. Feeling rejection. When you feel rejection, you feel inferior, you feel unappreciated, you feel unaccepted. And when the father is absent, rejection is introduced in your life without your knowledge. You just know you started feeling unloved, unappreciated, unaccepted. So here's what Derek Prince said. Remember, he operates in the gifts of healings and he has his deliverance services. He stated in an article how the spirit of rejection enters through the door of emotional or physical rejection. The spirit of rejection enters through physical rejection or emotional rejection. So parental rejection to a child, a mother to the unborn. Do you know the unborn child can start feeling rejection before it's even born? Rejection is introduced to the unborn when the mother may say, well, I don't want another child. I don't really care for another child. Or I want to spite the man or whatever. All right? So she's not taking care of herself. She's in emotional distress. Well, the baby is going to feel that. The baby is going to feed off that emotional distress. And the baby is born already in a very negative, born in a negative situation. So parental rejection to a child. And he said, in another story he was sharing, he had an experience where he sensed this type of spiritual affliction on a woman who was in the service. And he went to this lady and he said, you have the spirit of death on you. And then when he was speaking to her, he said the spirit in her, the demonic spirit, because she was possessed, the demonic personality answered with the history of the dominance in her life. The demonic spirit said, is when she was 2 years old, I entered her. Because at 2 years old, she felt rejected, unwanted, and lonely. And so her life was open. Emotionally, she was an open book. Emotionally, she was vulnerable. And the spirit, we have, as Christians, we have the enemies working against us, right? And he said, at 2 years old, I entered her. And then from that time, her life was tormented. So here's what's happening. We're talking about how are the sense of brokenness, perpetuated. How are these cycles perpetuated? They're perpetuated sometimes without people even knowing they're perpetuated, because you're just doing what you know. You just do what you know. You do what you learn. You don't know it's the wrong thing. You just keep doing it. And guess what? The brain likes patterns. So once you do it repeatedly over and over and over again, it becomes hard to break it, because a habit is being formed. And you don't know a habit is being formed. You just know you are just continuing what you know, what you learn, what you imitated, what you patterned from your mother, not your father. So the parental styles of a child's parent sends messages to the child who is learning. Remember, the brain is developing, right? The brain is shaping. New connections are being formed in the brain. And messages are being sent to this child every day. So when the father is not there and the mother is stressed, one father said to me, he will get licks and he don't know what he getting licks for, because his mother was frustrated because the father was not there. So her parenting, her discipline became harsh and draconian because she's stressed. This man is not here. I have to work 2 jobs and I'm stressed out. All right? And he was getting licks. He said, I don't know what I was getting licks for. All right? And so that's what's happening. Learning happens in every context. So he felt rejected even by his present mother. All right? So double whammy. So men who experience childhood trauma, which is what happens when the father is absent, he's sending a message to this male child: I don't care about you. I don't love you. You're not important. I'm going about my business. It doesn't really matter that you exist. Messages that a child gets every day. Here's what one father said to me. He said, Miss Harper, I used to just go down by the river to fish. It's not that I really want to fish, but I know my friend would go by the river with his father, and he would just pretend he's fishing, but he's really watching them. And he said, that is what love is. He yearned for that. All right? I'm talking about perpetuating. He said he would go down by the football field and just kick ball. And he got kind of good with football. But he went down there because people were cheering him on. I said, yeah, this boy really good. So it's not that he loved football. He wanted the validation of somebody. He wanted somebody to recognize him. He wanted to be visible. He wanted to be seen as important. You understand what I'm saying? So he was doing that just to get that kind of validation. So he was in trauma due to the absent father. All right? The absent father, highly likely, children who experience childhood trauma due to absent father, highly likely to parent and lead from their pain. So you perpetuate it because you are in pain, you lead from your pain. Or you mask your pain. But guess what happens? When you have had an experience, you can't not have the experience. Okay? Once you've had it, you have had it. You all get what I'm saying? So that experience stays with you for the rest of your life unless you intervene and you address it. Because trauma never leaves the body. It stays in the body until it is exposed and you get help with it. All right? Remember, a traumatized child becomes a traumatized man who would parent children out of their trauma. And then they'll re-traumatize their children, who would become traumatized and have children and traumatize the children. You all understand? You see the cycle I'm talking about here? And so without intentional intervention, the traumatized child would become a man who traumatized others. Just some key points on intergenerational trauma, because that's what's happening. You talk about perpetuating the cycle. It goes on for generations, all right? And this is what the research shows, is that generations before you, there was a pattern that was being handed down at some point. And then you got it. You inherited it. and then you just continue the cycle because you're not sure, you're not realizing that this is a generational issue. So, some key points on intergenerational trauma. One is parenting from pain. So, the unhealed trauma manifests as a primary source for behaviors leading men to parent and act based on feelings of anger, frustration, insecurity, isolation, and anxiety. I have dealt with families, men tonight, right? I've dealt with women who have come into the office and I've said, I'm absolutely frustrated with this man. He's not playing his role. He's not being with the children. He's not spending time with the children. He's dropping things all over the place. She said, Miss, the basket will be there and they drop it clothes right next to the basket. Why you can't just put it in the basket? He drop it next to the basket. So I said, well, let's go back into his childhood. Who was there? Usually, the man is not there. A mother is there, and the mother does everything for him. Cook and wash, clean everything. So the boy never gets an opportunity to take initiative, to grow up and everything. All right? So he drops it at the side, mommy will pick it up. So guess what, Brother Frank? When he gets married, he drop it at the side because his wife will pick it up. It just perpetuates. It just perpetuates the cycle. All right? So what you learn, you perpetuate. Frustrating, guess what? So the trauma that the men are inheriting is affecting not only them and their behavior and their leadership, but affects their relationships, affects their marriages, affects their parenting, affects any area of their lives. All right? It will be perpetuated. And the other thing is behaviors can be transmitted from one generation to another. So again, what you learn can be passed on without you even know you're passing it on. Because whatever is modeled is going to be imitated by the children in the household. All right? The other one is widespread impact. The inherited trauma isn't confined to the home. It significantly affects a man's performance and perspective in all of his roles, including husband, father, grandfather, professional roles as teacher, police officer, church leader, anybody. Trauma stays with you. Can you imagine that trauma stays with someone who's influential and that person has to make a decision for you? That person making the decision out of their stress and their frustration, and it's going to affect your life. That's a very dangerous thing. All right? What it does as well is skew your lens. So when you're young and you grow up in an environment where you're not feeling that important, or only your mother or a female is telling you who you are, it's going to skew your lens. It's going to skew your lens a little bit, all right, in terms of who you really are. So the trauma informs and skews the men's interpretation of everyday life. That's the lens through which they see problems to be solved. So you solve your problems the way your mom would solve the problem, not the way a man would solve the problem, which would be different, right? In fact, the research was referring to fathers as the second parent, not the primary parent. And that's unfortunate. Every time I get an opportunity, I address that issue with men in the health centers and so on. I said, men, you are a primary parent. But because men are running from their responsibilities many times, or they're anxious about standing up and facing, the research has over time seen them as a secondary parent and not a primary parent. All right? So what that does, that affects the child, because the child now sees the authority as the mother. The fathers would say, when your mother come home, I'll tell your mother. We look through the research, and guess what? In many, many countries of the Caribbean, who is the disciplinarian? Not the father. The disciplinarian is the mother. The mother is disciplining. The mother is managing the household. The man is out. Well, I have to bring the bread home and put the bread on the table. And I say to them, every time you leave, you're absent. And the child is bonding with the person who's the most present, which is their mother. I see that question. I'm going to get your question now. I just want to show you men, um, people who have experienced trauma, like childhood trauma, like we are saying, with the father absent, are 4 times more likely to become alcoholics, to engage in sexually transmitted diseases, inject drugs, use antidepressant for depression, absent from work, commit suicide, smoke tobacco, experience depression. These are men or people who have experienced trauma in childhood. They are highly likely to become um, mentally unwell or physically unwell or emotionally unwell in the future. And that's what the research shows. I have a lot more, but I don't know, I'm looking at the time. I saw a question. My husband had a question.
All right, so I was thinking that we model what we become what we model, all right? And if it is that as a male, I was shaped by an environment where there was an absent or uninvolved father, and I become a man, but I'm kind of mothered, and so some things were lost. But I want to parent my children. Then what it means then is that I will parent them based on this picture of what a man is supposed to be. And it may be flawed, but I'm perpetuating it. And that's the challenge because I know that I'm a man. I say I'm a man, I have the anatomy as a man and whatever. And I'm doing what I think men do. But the problem is that what I think men do have been shaped by my mother, and I am perpetuating a broken pattern. And one of my concerns is that coming to Christ without that awareness doesn't guarantee that I will kind of correct that. Because I could come to Christ as a man and I tell myself, I'm a man, I'm a male, I'm a man of God. But I will continue to parent how I know because these things are in me. This is in me, this is how I'm shaped. So I'm going to perpetuate and not even realize that I'm not really modeling the ideal picture. So I think that a recognition that this is not how it's supposed to be, this thing must happen if there is to be a repivoting along the right path. My thought.
Any other thoughts on that? Anything that you heard so far? Any comments?
Um, my question is, what is the difference between antisocial behavior pertaining to rejection? Because there are comments, people say, you are a very quiet person, but you are very reserved. But reservedness to me is a way of life that I choose to focus and get my result in whatever I am doing. So antisocial behavior is very close to a reserved person. Is that a problem?
Well, in fact, antisocial behavior is not quite that. So, antisocial behavior doesn't mean unfriendly, and it doesn't mean quiet or reserved. antisocial behavior really is a mental disorder. So you're not antisocial, you're just reserved. So don't use that word antisocial. We throw it around and say that person's antisocial, meaning they're not friendly or they're stoic or by themselves. No. Antisocial is actually has to do with people who are deviants in the society, delinquents in the society, hurt people, antisocial behavior, you're antisocial. So you don't fit into the social norms of society. You're anti-social. All right? So how the general population would behave, you behave different to that. Anti mean against. All right? All right? So don't refer to yourself as that at all. Okay?
Yeah, because
So
that's the
people
word
who-
that word I've been using for years. Well, not
No,
only me,
people
but
who commit-
people use it towards
Yeah. We've been using it all along.
use it towards me. Then they say,
Yeah.
I am an antisocial person.
But don't accept that. Don't accept that. Just
You-
before you go on, people who commit criminal activity are antisocial.
let me say one.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's what is acceptable behavior in society. You behave different to what is considered acceptable social responses. Not you. So you are not antisocial.
I'm a reserved person.
You're reserved. That's part of your personality.
Because they said that's how you stop.
Or you learn that behavior from your parents or whomever in your
But I didn't grow up with no father.
Okay.
I grew up with my mom.
Yes.
But I don't really have no sort of emotions. I feel sorry for my mother or what my father did. Because my father wasn't really around. And I didn't say no, I don't think my mother said, that's your father. Right? So what I did growing up with my mother didn't know much neither. So I don't know much, she don't know much. So it come like you're learning from somebody who don't know much.
Exactly.
So I grew up in that type of environment.
Yeah.
But inside of me, there has been a quest
Yes.
to know the right things.
Yes.
Say the right words, behave the right way.
Yes.
Especially things like etiquette.
Yes.
I never learned them things.
Yes.
Table manners.
Yes.
We sit down on the ground and eat.
Yeah.
And we sleep on the ground. Poverty stricken.
Yeah.
But inside of me, there is a resistance towards anything that resembles poverty that I went through.
Yes.
Right? So many times I just be attacked by other people by my behavior, which I call antisocial behavior. In other words, if I'm in a company, I focus on getting ahead financially, because if I ask you for $10, the first thing you will tell me I no money to give. And I don't like people to tell me they have no money to give me. I just feel rejected. Right? So I began to work towards not being rejected and asking people for anything. So my mother said to me, people will not like you because you are not the type of person who will ask people for things. Even though I'm suffering, I'm hungry, I won't come and ask you because of the fear that they will tell me no.
So that's a learned behavior.
Yeah.
All right. So sometimes we learn behaviors that are not quite what it should be, just that you learn that behavior. For example, let me give you a quick example, and thank you so much for that. Let me give you a quick example. Someone in their childhood, sometimes children are chatty, right? And they go up and they always want to say something. And the child was constantly told, hush him out and go in your room. Hush him out and go in your room. Do you know what happened? That child became an adult without a voice. So even though that person had something to say, they will never say it because they grew up hearing, hush him out and go in your room. So the message, remember, messages are coming all the time. the message to that person, because that's something that perpetuated. The message to that person was, what you have to say is not important. So as an adult, even though she had something to say, she felt that what she had to say was not important, and people may laugh at her, and she remained quiet. So we have now to work that out, that behavior out of her. But that was learned and perpetuated. You understand what I'm saying? And it happens in households as well. And I'm glad you said that. What you said, because people parent out of their brokenness. And guess what? If a parent parents another child out of their brokenness, that child develops some brokenness. Because you said it right. I learned what she knew. And you only learn what she knew and nothing else. Although you had a desire, and it's that desire that broke you out of that. Or else that would have been your trajectory. You would have only known little because your mother is the one who was setting the pace. She was giving you the template for the rest of your life. You will only know very little. But you had a desire to know more. But you got that from somebody else. Somebody else introduced that to you. That desire didn't come up like that because you were exposed to very little. So you would have seen that somewhere. All right? You know, one father said, this father said, I always watched Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and the Bill Cosby Show, because that's when I saw men in a powerful role as a husband and a father. His father was absent, and he didn't only model was his mother. And he said, I need to find something else that looked like a man. And he said, when I get older, I'll parent my son like Bill Cosby and like the father in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And that's the thing. Again, there's a cavity, there's an emptiness, there's a yearning that's inside the male child that I need somebody to fill this space. All right? And they realize even though the mother is there, the space is still there. Because it's not the presence of the mother that inflicts the father wound. It's the absence of the father that inflicts the father wound. Because the message that you get, Brother Robertson, is rejection, is abandonment, is you're not important. And that becomes part of your personality, because your personality is shaped in childhood. So you grow up feeling less than. You grow up feeling unimportant. You grow up feeling unappreciated. And you take that right into all of your relationships and your leadership, everything. You convey that message. All right? And that's very important. You're only going to pass on what you know. All right? So a lot of men now, grandfathers and all of that, are looking back. And people, adults, a lot of adults we work with, they are now having to do that walk back into their childhood. Make sense of what happened there. Not deny it. Not pretend it didn't happen. Identify it, it happened. It created some trauma. Identify what the trauma is, or the trauma situations were. What are my triggers now as an adult? So your father, your grandfather, your leader, what is it I need to pinpoint that I learned from my absent father or my present mother that I should not have learned? I read an article from Jamaica. So these Jamaican young boys were interviewed. Do you know what they said? And these men they were engaging in criminal activity. Do you know what they said? The father, our father, who's supposed to be the breadwinner, who's supposed to bring in the money, is absent. So we had no choice but to go and engage in illegal activity to survive. So there was an assumption that this person is supposed to be playing that key role in their lives. And they had this loss of who they are. What contribution can I make to society? All right? Because I'm told something, and then, I inherited something, which is the absence and the rejection and the abandonment, and I become an adult with abandonment issues. So some men may, or people may grow up older and they stay in relationships or they stay attached to people not because they are growing in those friendships, but because they fear abandonment. All right? They don't want to be rejected again because they know what it felt like when they were rejected as a child. You all understand what I'm saying? And so you find that behaviors as an adult may be reflective of something that was inherited as a child. Let me just tell you something. I'm coming to you. A man, because I want to give you what these men actually said, right? Here's one in terms of systemic traumatization. This man who was traumatized, he cried. Listen, I had 9 men who interviewed, probably hundreds of hours of interviews, many hours of interviews, and 7 out of 9 of them were broken, sobbed, cried. Understand? Because they were recounting an experience that they lived, and they understand the implications of that experience. When they not only describe what happened in their childhood, they gave me what they understood that meant about them, their masculinity, their sense of existence, their identity, their contribution to life, how they're going to parent another child, what that meant for them. 7 of them broke down and they wept, they sobbed. All right, this is a real thing. And that is why sometimes I feel a lot of empathy for men. All right, and I keep saying to people, men never get an opportunity to really get in touch with their feelings because society has not created a safe space for men to be themselves. So men just talk around their issue. They talk about the weather, the cricket and politics and everything, and never talk about their pain because they never had an opportunity since childhood to talk about their pain. Because remember, the pain is not important. You got to suck it up. And so you inherited that. One of them said, as he cried, he recounted loss, pain, anger, hatefulness, grief, regret, not being more open as a father. He said, lacking understanding and sensitivity. He's perpetuating something he invented. Right? Sensitivity, his son's desire. His son wanted closeness and proximity. And he said, Miss Lilith, I can't do it. He said, my son will be right next to me. And I can't hug him, and I'm dying. I want to hug him, and I can't hug him. It's weird. It's weird to hug him. I can't hug him. So what his son does, the son runs away and go to other people and get the hugs. He's not going to the father because the father's message from society was, and since he was little, was men have to be strong and aggressive and shout at you. So he didn't want to be humiliated, and he ran from him. And he said it was breaking him in a million pieces. But he cannot hug him, son. His son wanted to hug him and couldn't hug him either because he was afraid of him. He said, I could have been wrong and should have been the one to console him. But I would say, boy, forget that. Shake it off. That sound familiar? You all as men? Some of you are like, yeah, maybe. He said, shake it up, boy. Shake it up. He disclosed a typical conversation. He would just go to his son and say, hey, you good? No softness, no tenderness. He said, nobody showed that to me. How am I going to do that? And it wasn't showed to me. He said, hey, you good? Everything normal? And the son said, yeah, daddy. And he said he knew that he was not okay. But the child was afraid to tell him. All right? He said, I'm trying. And he's weeping. He said, I'm trying, Miss Lilith. I'm trying. All right? Another one said, I think it's very sad. I've been affected so much that I can't even find the time to switch off. This father said he believed that he feel like a switch was put on in him and broke on. You know, the on switch and off switch. He said the switch broke on. And he's never able to relax. He said to me, Miss Harper, I can't go on vacation. He said vacation is a waste of time. Imagine that. He said, because I was socialized to work hard, and all I did was work. He said, taking a vacation is wasting time. He says, like, put on a switch. He said, I have to accept it for what it is. I thank God because it could have been worse. I have to find some way to laugh. He said, I want to laugh and relax, but it's not in me. Because again, socialized without a father. And his mother said, you have to work, you have to be serious. And all of these men, their mothers really helped them with their education. But emotionally, they were still traumatized. He said, I don't know what enjoyment is. I think these things are bad habits and might lead to disaster in my life. How I shape myself, bringing relaxation in my life, he says, frightening. And that's just some of the, I wanted to give exact words that these men gave because these were fathers too, these were men too.
Okay, before I get into my next question, I just want to acknowledge two online persons. It's Mr. John and Codrington. They are online. We are glad to have you. I do encourage that if you have any questions or so, you can send them and we will try to answer them as best as we could. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us online. Dr. Lillett, my next question is, how might the impact of unrecognized fatherlessness hinder a man's ability to step into faithful leadership roles in the church?
Okay, that's a very good question. Okay, to remember what we said before, that you perpetuate what you learn. Okay, so if anxiety was introduced to your life, if feeling uncertain was introduced early in your life, that stays with you and just compounds. And as an adult, it becomes difficult for you to step into a role that's going to create further anxiety. So what a lot of men do is they run from leadership because leadership scares them. Okay? I gave you the situation again of some women who were saying the men were not taking leadership roles. And I said to them many times, in childhood, they would have inherited, it's no excuse, but in childhood, they inherited some things that they're perpetuating. Now they need to know what to do so they can address that, so they can now lead the role. A fatherless man can create fatherless boys or youth. All right? Because some things you may struggle with is anger, frustration, identity issues, mental confusion, aloneness, loneliness, emotional disconnect, detachment, abandonment issues that might allow the person to crave social connections and do whatever is possible to maintain them out of fear of being abandoned again. So that's why I said, you have these emotions that were introduced into your life, and then you gravitate to friendships and relationships, and you stay there, and you realize that this person is not really helping me to grow, but I know what abandonment feels like. So we're talking about how would the unrecognized impact of fatherlessness hinder your ability to step into faithful leadership roles. Okay? So we are seeing that some men may take the path of least resistance and get into situations that would not let them stretch or let them, for example, you know that from very early, I can say from very early, I was always anxious. I always felt anxious standing in front of people, standing in front of crowd. So what you do, you don't continue to say, well, you know what? I feel really anxious standing in front of the crowd, so I will let somebody else do it. No. What can I do to help myself so I can stand in front of a crowd with confidence? So I don't run from it. It's going to make you feel anxious at first, because remember, that was inherited, and that's what you know. All right? But if you're going to step into a leadership role, if you're going to be able to influence people, You're going to have to be able to use the initiative, and you're going to have to stand, even if you start with a small crowd, and then you get a bigger crowd and a bigger crowd and bigger crowd. What you are doing, you're spotlighting an issue that needs to be worked on, and you're working on it. But the more you run away from that responsibility, is the least opportunity you are getting to address it. All right? So you have the leadership roles, and the men are not taking the leadership roles. Guess who's going to take the leadership roles? And that's not God's design, because we've been hearing that over and over and over again, right? The men are to be taking these leadership roles. All right? So that's what would happen. You inherited certain kinds of emotional behaviors, certain kind of behaviors, certain kinds of emotions that are triggers in your life, and then you perpetuate it. And then because of the anxiety, you run from that responsibility. As a leader, you might not physically leave the group, but due to the fear and anxiety, you check out. So you're with the group, but you're not there. All right? You check out, but you stay in the group because you don't want to be abandoned. And you understand what I'm saying? All right? So you hide in the group. You hide in the group. So you're not really getting a chance to stand out and lead. So you find a safety net of, let me stay in the crowd. Let me stay in the group so I would never have to stand in front of people, if that's the issue. Because as a leader, you're going to have to forge ahead. Many times, leadership roles are lonely roles because you have to lead. You have to create this new path. All right? Okay? So leadership in the church is influenced by not a desire or feeling or motivation, but a commitment to grow when the challenges emerge. But if in your childhood, the father was not there, all right, and nobody was there to lead, nobody gave me a model to say, okay, this is how the family is going to go. This is what we're going to do today. You understand? That man, someone of the same gender as you, was not there to affirm you and validate you. This is who you are. Come on, let's go, whatever. Go to the river. Let's go kick some ball. Let's go here, whatever. One man said to me, Miss Harper, I don't even know if I'm great. I don't know if I'm great. I don't know if I'm a great man. Because nobody told me that. And one time he went into an event and he said, Miss Lillette, I just disappeared. I went in hiding to see if anybody would miss me. And he said, nobody came. He said it broke his heart. They did not even miss him. He felt invisible again. Understand what I'm saying? And again, how would he even stand in a place of leadership when he feels that sense of uncertainty on the inside? When he feels that invisibility on the inside? Are you all understanding what I'm saying? Leadership requires commitment, stick-to-itiveness. It requires you to stand when it's rough, stand when it's alone. All right? But you know what alone feels like because the father was not there. So you know what alone feels like. You know what lonely feels like. So when you have to be a leader and you have to play that leading role and you have to experience what aloneness feel and loneliness feel, you don't like those feelings. Because that is what? That is reminding you of an experience that you had when you were younger. And that's not a good feeling. So what I do, I run from that. If in childhood the constant message was absence, it might be easier to take the path of least resistance or the path where least effort is needed. Because leadership requires humility, but it requires grit, discipline, perseverance, commitment, vision, drive. But remember, who taught me how to do this? Who taught me how to lead? Who taught me how to use my initiative? Who taught me how to plan? Who taught me how to organize? Who taught me how to forge ahead? I didn't learn that. So how do I now step into a role of leadership when I was not modeled? It was not modeled for me. I'm going to tell us of a word called self-efficacy. Anybody ever heard that word? Self-efficacy? Yes? Anybody? What does it mean? The red. Give it the mic. Give it.
Let me see if I can remember. Um, it's it's like an internal. Look it out properly, right?
Say what comes to your mind.
All right, it's like building up on yourself. To me, it is like building up on yourself in terms of make understanding your awareness or understanding what is becoming more aware of what is happening in and around and just like turning it full circle. That's what how I explain it. It's not exactly what coming in my head, but
Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
it's like that.
All right, thank you for the effort. Thank you for the effort. So we're talking about why men have sometimes difficulty stepping into leadership roles. Self-efficacy is a word that you might try to remember. All right? What it is how you appraise your ability to do something. It's a self-appraisal, right? It's almost like you look into yourself and say, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Do I feel bad? Do I think I do this? Do I have the competence to do this? Do I feel anxious about this? So you appraise yourself. So the self-appraisal of your competence and your beliefs in your capabilities to accomplish something. Right? That's what you wanted to say, right? Yeah. 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 So guess what? When you're a male child and you were only told negative things about yourself, that you were not really affirmed, you were not really encouraged, you were not really felt made to feel that you can accomplish this task. All right? Which is what a lot of men in the research did. They felt that they could not carry on this role because the role was not modeled for them. So their self-efficacy was low. They felt like one father said, how am I going to raise this boy? What am I going to say to him? How do I know if the standard is too high or too low? When nobody told me where to put the bar. All right? So when you look into yourself, we're talking about stepping into leadership. When you look into yourself and you are praising your ability to do this task or not, the template that you use, the lens that you use to assess yourself, you have to be careful. All right? So some men appraise themselves and say, well, I come up short. I better not step into that. I may make myself look like a fool. You understand? But that template that you use to assess yourself was given to you by somebody. And it was not your father. Or you didn't have a male figure. Or you didn't have a mentor. So it was women, a lot of women, or it was your mother. And most of these men, that's what they had. Their mothers, and one of them had their grandmother. So your self-efficacy can be low or it can be high. You learn the behavior not to be able to carry on this role or not to be able to do this because it was modeled to you that you were not able to. How it was modeled to you that you're not able to, you were never given an opportunity to do it. So that was the modeling. You were never given an opportunity to do it. And now I have to step into that role and play a role that I was not prepared for. Remember, what you learn or you inherit, you're going to perpetuate. All right? So there are opportunities that you can learn and you can grow, but you have to want to learn and grow in those areas and break the mold that was set for you, the mold that was created, the template that was created, the blueprint that was made, the script that was written for you by your absent father or your inconsistent father. That script that was written for you, you can break out of that mold. Just like Brother Robertson. All right? I remember my brother-in-law said that as well. He said, Lilith, I grew up in poverty, but poverty was never in me. It's a mindset. You can decide if I'm going to continue to be like what my father did. Like one father said to me, for the first time in his life, with much tears and crying, he said, I'm doing the same thing my father did. With no effort. He didn't go out and say, well, I'm going to do what daddy did. Daddy did. The same thing. The porn and the womanizing and the drugs. He said, I'm doing the same thing my father did. To me, I'm doing that to my children. And that's where the generational issue came. All right? So that would have created some problems in terms of stepping into leadership because of how you assessed yourself. It's like Paul. Paul said, the things I really want to do, I find myself not doing it. That internal struggle, the things that I find myself doing, I don't want to do. The things that I don't want to do, I find myself doing. That struggle on the inside. And so a lot of men, what they do, they have that internal struggle. But who are they going to say to? Who are they going to talk to about it? All right? So what that, they just run away from leadership. They just don't stand into leadership because that's a trigger to remind them of experiences that they would have had that did not create good feelings. So if shame and lack of confidence was introduced at vulnerable stages of development, and this was reinforced by the absence of clear and focused intervention, then this fear and anxiety would perpetuate into other areas where proactive attitude is required. So it's very easy to step back and let somebody else lead. Because if I step into that leadership, I'm going to be anxious. I'm not going to feel comfortable. Because nobody ever told me that I could do this. And when I appraise myself, I look into myself, I think I can't do it. So my language, the very thing that I say to myself, informs the way I behave. So I tell myself I can't do it, then you can't do it. But if you tell yourself, if I work hard, and if I sit and with the anxiety a little bit, I'm going to be able to master this. I'm not going to be ever not have anxiety, but I'll be able to continue to do it even with the anxiety. Are you all with me? You all with me? So these two researchers, Crespi and Ruspini, this is what they said. They showed that fathers' self-concept and self-identity, shaped primarily by their families of origin and the broader culture, had to be adjusted to assume a future role. A behavior that was shaped had to be adjusted to assume the role. Because if you continued with that same one, then you're going to find yourself shying away from anything that's going to trigger anxiety or trigger you and making you feel less than who you are. When a feeling of not good enough, or fear of failure, or fear of being laughed at is built into the personality at early stages of life, it has later outcomes. It inhibits proactive attitude and use of initiative because it's a fear of failing. There's a fear of being laughed at. There's a fear of looking stupid. So I don't step into that role. All right? Yeah. Devon.
Dr. Lillard, I know there's a lot more to be said on this topic, but unfortunately, because of our time constraint, and we do want to get into transition into another discussion, right? I just want to say one thing though. I can see, and while you were speaking, I can see why some of the things that I did, where it all began from, as a man, right? So I just want to ask you to just, if you could probably just give us a closing statement on what you have said. I know there's a lot more to be done. This would take probably a good while, but unfortunately tonight we just have a short space of time, and I think we should be able to continue this at another time. But I do want to thank you for sharing what you have shared. I know as men, some of us, we learn something. We can see where what we patterned, all right, might not have been the best, all right? And as men, we would strive, not to pass on what we learned. I mean, some things might have been good, and then something might have been bad, and we wouldn't want to pass on the bad, to our children. So, so I will just invite you to give us a closing statement, and then I will turn over to Pastor Akil, who will take us into our short time of discussion. All right. So,
Right. So what the church practically can do in light of the challenges that churches, not just this church, but many local churches are struggling with in terms of church-based intentional um, approaches. All right, and I say church-based because that's one of the questions that will come in later on. Because the church would need to embrace the magnitude of the problem that we are facing. And it is lagging behind. Restoration is not possible if the problem is not clearly defined, described, and identified. Mentoring, according to Titus 2:6, the older men are supposed to be helping the younger men. Mentoring is the passing on of lived experiences to another and coaching them on that journey, especially when they become stuck. The challenge is when so healing will take time, but will be consistent with honesty about the depth of the problem and its past and present day implications. And then the reality is ministry to men is ministry to marriages, parenting, families, and leadership. And there's more to that. There's hope. There's hope for men who have those struggles and who have other issues that they need to identify that's affecting them as heads of households, as in not stepping into leadership capacities. There's hope. And so my hope is that as a ministry, broadly and specifically, that there's an opportunity to identify what those specific internal challenges are and be able to get real help. With the help of God, the Word of God, but also work through some of them. Thank you so much.
thank you, Dr. Lillet. I'll now turn us over to Pastor Akil.
All right. Good night, men. So we want to. I know the time is kind of running away. So we want to go into a short time of discussion. I know Jose just moved, but I'm going to ask him to move again because we want to split into 4 groups, 4 groups of 4. So if we could do that first, and then I'll give you the question. But 4 groups of 4. We have enough space, so some could be here, some could be on that side. But 4 groups of 4. All right, you all could center yourselves around the fans because I know that the place is a little warm. But 4 groups of 4, so you need to count it. One, two, three, 4. All right, so we have our groups. Nice. So 2 questions, right? Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I didn't count it before I said 2 groups of 4, so it's okay if yeah. So 3 groups of 5. All right, no problem. All right, so we want to take about let's say 15 minutes, right? But I'll call it off just before because we'll try to keep within the time. But I want to invite us just to a two-pronged question that is more or less the same. Based on what we've discussed tonight, what I want you all, and we'll just present it after so that everyone could have an idea. What are key actionable steps our men's ministry could adopt to make the church a hub for healing and restoration in light of the presentation on fatherlessness? What are some actionable steps that the men's ministry can take, right? And also, what are some actionable steps that we as men could take in terms of being our brother's keeper, seeking out wholeness, seeking out restoration, and seeking to overcome challenges that we may be facing? Right? So those are the two questions. We want to get as much input as possible. Right? So on one side, what are some steps that the men's ministry can take, right, in light of the presentation? What are some things that we could do as a church, as a men's ministry to help with healing and mentoring? And also, what are some steps that we can take as men? That does not depend on the men's ministry, but just we as men, this is something that we do in order to bring about wholeness, restoration. Yeah? So we have about, I'll tell you when the time is up. Yeah? Huh? Oh, let's see. Right, O'Neill, Brother Robertson, and thanks, Jesse, for coming. Right, just to collect the information and after you will share it. Yeah? Yeah. Right, so please, I'm asking you, please write it down. Right, please write it down and we'll collect it after. Huh? Right, so the questions are, once again, please write down the what you come away with, right? So that we can have it after. Huh? You need something to write with? No problem, we'll get it. Yeah? What you could do, you could take notes? All right, nice. So the two questions, what are some actionable steps that the men's ministry can take, right? To promote wholeness, to promote healing, to promote restoration in light of what we've heard, and also what are some steps that we as men can take, right, to be our brother's keeper, to help create an environment where we could find restoration and also those around us. Yeah? To those online, we will be back in a little while to present the outcomes from the discussion. All right, men. I know the conversation is still going, so let me ask you to please begin to wrap up, right? That's about 2 or 3 more minutes. All right. I don't want to stop the pastor from speaking, so I'll wait. But let me ask us to, you could probably remain in your groups, right, just for the sake of seeing it. But let me ask the person who would be coming up to present if you could come forward for each of the groups. Huh? Huh? All right, so let me ask us, I know you all had your discussions as a group, so when your group representative is speaking, you might feel compelled to not listen, but we want to pay attention to all the takeaways, and I'll ask again for what you all have. I didn't see you come up with anything written there. All right, don't worry. All right, but please send it to us. I am sure our men's ministry president would like the feedback, and we'd like it as men as well. All right, so please just keep it brief, concise. All right.
All right. For us, as in terms of our group, discussing the question, um, to be honest with you all, I don't think the timing that we had was enough to really expound on those questions because, I mean, when you look at these things, this is some serious issues, and it was even mentioned in our group that if you look in our society, we see that there's something happening, not just within the church, but in all different aspects. So one of the things that was mentioned is that that I would have mentioned to the group. You know, we know the saying of hurting people hurt people, but we need to change that in the sense of healing people could heal people. You know, and in order for that to happen, it have to start in terms of with us. You know, it was mentioned in our group that we have to sit down and discuss and be real with each other, real with each other as men, and really talk about these things because sometimes as men, we don't really talk much, we don't say much, you know, and because of that, we try to lock everything inside because sometimes that is what we learn. And because of that, it's not helping. And then now is either we are unable to navigate and really be impactful in terms of to our family and to our community and all these things. So with this question, I would clearly say that we, as a men's ministry, I think it shouldn't stop at tonight. We should find some, not just maybe a 2 minutes or a 2 hours or some kind of small period, but we should find a long period that we could really sit down and really open up as men, really have more solid and firm discussion around this, and not just have discussion, but be able to take this down, put it together, and then see how we could implement it as men in our lives. And then in doing so, we could be able to go and reach other men and use that as a template in helping them as well. So that is our group takeaway. All right. All right, good night. I could agree with the brother there. Part of the question was what are some of the actions or steps that the men's ministry could promote healing and wellness. So we came up with a couple, and it started with having more sessions like tonight or activities that's the one like we have tonight with discussions. However, we know that the challenge is men being able to open up, um, you know, and having to say much. So what we actually came up with as well is having more lightened activities to kind of where men tend to actually more bond together. And those activities include stuff as, simple stuff like sports, fishing. We may not all like the same thing, but some we can agree that men tend to bond along those lines. And, once we get the light mood, you tend to have men open up a lot more with their expressions and their, what they need to say. Things just come out. I work in a barber shop, so I know. So, you know what I mean? Having intentional mentorship programs. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but mentorship programs or things put in place to, mentor our young men and motivate our old men as well, knowing that we have an obligation. So mentorship is one thing. The fourth one is also having, breaking our own barriers in terms of releasing all the, I think Joel said it, where we know it's a widespread thing, but we have our challenge of breaking our own barriers, breaking our own stuff that we had gone through in the past, and evaluating our lives as to where we need to be as men. The second part of the question, I believe, was what we could do internally as men, I believe. This one, 5 and 6, has to do with, having deeper conversations with our children. Yeah, having deeper conversations as men, creating an environment where men can be more open, getting more men involved in ministry. And of course, to get involved in ministry, we have to have a deeper connection with God and the Word. And lastly, being our brother's keeper, seeking out the needs. Somehow I was kind of like wanted to expand on this one because we tend to somehow know we have a mandate to, the outside, which is to go into the world, preach the word, help others, etc., etc. But right inside the house of God, we have, men who are in need or in suffering in some way, and we're not really looking at our brother to say, well, hey, what's up? We're going on with you this week. So in that way, we stay connected, we stay grounded, and we know what is needed at some point to say, well, hey, I will check here, or, I'll reach out to you probably later on and see where we can help. So basically, that's our take that we can, do as men to further the kingdom and be better.
All protocol observe, good night. Our team discuss fellowship. Most of the time, men, to get to be connected with men, you have to have fellowship. Most of the time, like we say, I come here. None of you know who I am. If I go to you tonight and something happened, none of you know who I am. But when we have a men's ministry and we get to know each other, we have fellowship. Fellowship in the sense that we can talk to young men, we can talk to old men, and we can bring out things that are inside of us that it seems to lie dormant in us that cause us to not perform because somehow our men, we stick. But when you stick, it means that you're not moving forward. So one of our thing was fellowship. The next one was building a relationship. This is almost the same. I remember when I was young growing up with men, my house it burned down in Champlain, 1987, and the men of the church came with a talent. There was no charging, give me $10 or $50 or $20. They came Saturday morning, I provide the material, they provide the labor, and a little drinks, and they charge me nothing. So that caused us now to have a good relationship. And most of the time, the leader will say, tomorrow you preach, next week you will song service, tomorrow you will read our scripture. So that now make us develop spiritually. Because I sit down there and I don't know what talent I have. So the men bring out, the leader brings out the talent inside of you. And he says, you will preach. No, I cannot preach. But I gone up there and I started to preach. John 3:16, and that's all I staying on all the time. But the point is, he was bringing out something from us. And then he carried us out into the work field. We go and serve communion to a brother who is not well. Let me say he is not well, and he didn't come to church this morning. We will go and serve him communion. We go and visit the brother, and we say, brother, praise the Lord, give you communion, and we bless you. So this is one of the things I think to build a strong men ministry. This is what we need: fellowship, communication, and understanding. Amen?
Amen. Thank you very much to all the teams for all the discussion. Huh? I think we're just one person here. John? Okay, nice. Thank you for staying on to the end, John, and to anybody who would view the session afterwards. Thank you to the men as well for the discussion and also the feedback. Again, please take note of it, send it either to Devon or myself. So at least we have the feedback and it feeds into, because Brother Joel raised an important point, and some of the others as well, that this is and should be an ongoing conversation, right? We want to bring things to a close at this time. Let me invite our dear pastor, Reverend Warren Harper, to come and bring it to a suitable close. We want to say thanks again to Reverend Dr. Lynette Harper. I know for sure that we are not through in terms of the discussion, but at the very least we have an idea of where some of these talks could go and how it could be beneficial to us. So thank you so much for your time. I see a hand.
Hand it over to me. Hallelujah. Yes. I want to say thanks. Lilith, you want to say something, Drew? Okay, yeah. I want to say thanks to, well, everybody, the presenters, Pastor Keel, Brother Devon, and those else in the men's ministry, and also for you coming out. I really appreciate my wife. I think that I say this with all seriousness and sincerity. I think that her study is very, very important for understanding men's issues, getting a sense of the history and the source and those kinds of things. And we are actually privileged in that we have access to that information easily, and it is something that we need to use. In our group, we realize that there's so much problem recognition and definition needed to really isolate and describe. I realized that I was saying, as I listened to us, I said, we really are damaged as men. I mean, we have come into Christianity with so much brokenness. Yes. No, that's the word. We are wounded, right? The brother described it as a python spirit and the passion. But that's the reality. But we are looking at how do we heal? How do we heal as individuals? How do being part of a body heal you? And we want to, that's the direction I know that we want to go as a men's group. And so we know that we need to continue pressing on. So we want to thank all of you for coming out and making tonight a good session. We're going to be wrapping up shortly, but I want to ask my wife if she could come and just give her last closing thoughts. But again, as Pastor T said, this is not going to be the last time that we hear from her, because this is something that she's very passionate about, and I think she can really help be part of a solution that is needed.
Good night. Just one caution: when I heard the presentations, when I heard the submissions tonight, I think some of the groups are beginning to go into an area we have to be very careful about. One thing that's very consistent with men's groups is the fellowship, right? So men have been fellowshipping, maybe they need to do more fellowship. But guess what's going on? It's that men again are getting into the cycle of fishing and doing things, performing, doing things rather than getting in touch with what's inside, right? So that's why I appreciate what my husband said, and Ansel talk about the wound, the father wound and the mother wound. These are critical things. But if we get caught up with the fellowshipping and doing things and performing, because men, again, generally, we think we have to perform. We have to take care of our families. We have to go and work. Performance, performance, performance. And so we become very performative rather than getting in touch with what's really the issue, what's really hurting, what the real issue is, what's my background or my history. And what that does, what that helps you, then you can help these young ones. If you're able to do that and able to hear it, then you're able to model that for them as well. So I'm hoping that they're going to take that into consideration and really dig down. And this is what that group in the back was talking about. Dig down, not just doing things, but who you are, being, who you're becoming. I just want to add that.
Thank you. I know in my group you could hear, I know you're trying to honor the question, what do you do? All right? And we were hoping to do that, but we realized that, as Brother Joel said, with a limited time, when you start to stir up the pot, Brother Robertson, you realize that there's so much pain, there's so much damage, there's so many wounds. And I think that what is the recognition, I think that's what O'Neill was getting at. We got to create a safe space where men could take off the mask. We will not all cry. I don't really cry much, but I cry. But, sometimes when I was listening to Davon, I say, I wonder if Davon going to cry. When he was on the table, you sounded close to tears, my brother. But when these things really get you, you feel something inside. We really want to thank God for you, Lilith. I want to thank God for you, Pastor Keel and Davon and all of you men. And thank all of you for your transparency, your openness, and a recognition that this is what needs to be done. So I want to encourage you, if these kind of things need to be done, we encourage you to be here with us as we continue to do these things for the honor and glory of God. Let's stand and let's get you on your way, get you home. I thought I saw Mr. Nathaniel. He was here sometime. All right, well, he's not here. So I will ask Mr. Jesse Dixon. Y'all should have heard about him. He used to sing years ago. I've recognized your voice. Dismiss us in prayer, please, Mr. Dixon. This is Natasha's brother, for those who don't know.
Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for all what you have done tonight and all what you have said tonight, Lord Father God. Help us, Lord, as men to stand in your will and your way, Lord Father God. Help us to guide us in each way and each things that we do, all thoughts, everything that we speak out, Lord, let it come out the way that you will want us to see it, Lord Father God. Lord, guide us and protect us for the rest of the week, Lord Father God. We pray that we give us safe traveling and mercies tonight, Lord. And we thank you for all what we have done tonight and all what we have heard. Let it absorb into us, and we shall portray it into real life. In the name of Jesus.